Welcome to the Game Breakers podcast in association with Rhino Rugby League, where we look to bring you tips, insights and experience from the world of sport. My name is Rob Nicolay, and as always I'm joined by my co-host Danny Wilson. But today we are joined by former Leeds Rhinos captain, Great Britain, England and Yorkshire Carnegie Rugby Union player, and now current director of rugby for Leeds Rhinos. He's also a 7-time Grand Final winner, 2 Challenge Cup wins, 3 World Club Challenge wins, 3 League Leaders Shields, the 2012 Golden Boot winner, 2 Harry Sunderland Trophy winners, the 2005 Lance Todd Trophy winner, second place in the 2015 BBC Sports Personality of the Year, and not forgetting receiving an MBE in 2014. And Kevin Sinfield, thanks for joining us, Kev.
Thank you. Thanks for that really kind introduction.
That was all about taking one breath.
Don't normally get an intro like that when I'm dealing with lads from Hull.
Morning, Kev. That introduction pretty much shortens our time now. We've got about 3 minutes left.
Spot on. We'll kick it off then. Like you say, we've done a number of these podcasts now, and really digging into the person as much as the player that we've seen on the field. So just to kick us off, can you describe Kevin Sinfield as a person? So son, husband, and father.
Yeah, it's a tough starting point that because I think how you view yourself doesn't always fit with reality. But I'd probably say try and live my life as honest as I can be, and I'd like to think my family would think I were very caring. I'd like to think in my role now, and when I played as well, that people thought I actually cared about what I did and cared about them and cared about the teams I were in and the environments I were part of. So they'd probably be the two things. Keep it simple.
Going on, straight from the word caring, you complete a lot of challenges for good causes, running marathons and things like that. And most recently to help your good friend Rob Burrows. How is it going with the trust fund there for Rob?
Yeah, it set off like an house on fire. The support we got right at the start, when Rob was first diagnosed that week before Christmas, it hit everybody like a ton of bricks. So that initial push with, just the response on the Just Giving page was immense from the game. Not just Leeds fans, the whole game, and then probably wider sport as well was unreal. And then we had a big dinner for him where there was it was held at the ground, and there was some real big hitters from sport who came along. Gareth Southgate, Josh Warrington, to name a couple. And I'll throw another one in. Will Greenwood, who was a Rugby Union World Cup winner, who were big fans of our sport, were there, and it was an incredible night for Rob. And then you think of that game as well, a testimonial game for Jamie Jones that he kindly shared with Rob, which was just an unbelievable event to be at. So on the back of that, there's been lots of little events that people have organised themselves, and support has been incredible for Rob. And then we find ourselves with sort of the coronavirus and lockdown, and that meant a lot of things were put on the back burner, and there's still people doing some great stuff. But obviously it made sort of your bigger type events where you had a number of people involved very, very difficult because of the guidelines. And so I'm seeing Rob today, ever since sort of lockdown started to open up. I've visited him every couple of weeks and spent some time with him. I'm with him this afternoon, which I'm really looking forward to. I was there with him about 10 days ago when Doddy visited, which was great. He's truly inspirational. So I think having finished playing, I realised there was a void, and I needed to fill it, because sort of the buzz and satisfaction you get from playing and winning and playing well, it's really difficult to replicate and find that elsewhere. So I started to run and get a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction from it, albeit very different. But it started to fill that void for me, and then I've been involved with a number of charities throughout sort of playing career. Prostate cancer was one that's quite close to home. Jane Tomlinson appeal in Leeds, and different other cancer charities, and look, every charity out there is really important. They do some brilliant things, Leeds Rugby Foundation, which is the charity that's connected with our club. Rugby League Cares, there's thousands of them out there that do wonderful stuff. And I suppose when we got the news about Rob, it was, I suppose, that everybody wanted to do so many good things for him, but that close group of players that we came through together with, wanted to make sure that Rob and his family are looked after.
Unbelievable. And like you say, I think, going back to that first question, it is that caring and that sort of band of brothers that you've got, within that group of Leeds. You could see, how tight-knit he was and how that pulled together, especially that, like you say, that game, which was televised, which was absolutely outstanding. But you could see that group really, caring for each other and pulling together in those times.
Yeah, it was a special group of players. I just feel so fortunate because you get asked quite a bit about, the trophies you win and best games and things like that. But actually, probably most proud of the friendships I've got, the memories, and I think that game in January probably epitomised a lot of that when it all come together. When we needed to be there for a mate and stand shoulder to shoulder with him, we did.
Yeah. Just like as you mentioned, obviously the trophies that you'd won together and everything. Just going down like a personal route. Just talk to us about your MBE. There's not many rugby league players with an MBE. How did that make you feel, and what was the day like when it was presented to you?
He's just incredibly humbled. I think it's a great experience. You set out on the rugby journey, and you're not quite sure where it's going to take you. And we all have ambitions and targets and things we want to achieve, but you're never quite sure whether you're going to be good enough or whether you need a whole lot of luck. And I look back on my own playing career, and so fortunate at times, so lucky at times to be part of a great club during a period where we had the success we did. The players have played alongside, like I said, the memories we got, and you realise, certainly in the role I played in my last couple of years, it changed a fair bit. But I massively relied on the team. I needed the lads to do their job for me to do what I did, and so to get recognised for that individually is massively humbling, because everything you do, everything you believe in is all about the team and putting the team first. And so to get singled out it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's massively humbling. And to be in that room that day, to know that my wife was there, my mum and dad, who, they're the three people who helped me so much and supported me through the good and bad times, to have them there with me and to be in that room with probably about another 200 people who were receiving awards that day. I was probably the youngest in the room. And to see so many different civil servants, people from the military, unbelievable scientists, actors who just had unbelievable careers, and I'm in there for playing rugby, and it was a bit surreal, but really, really great experience. But like I said, massively humbling. I think the sport has given me so many things, and I really love the sport, and I'm forever grateful.
You talk there as if everything's just been gifted to you, and obviously very part of your nature is being humble. And you're one of the most decorated players of all time. I think leading highest point scorer in Super League era. Talk us through that. That hasn't just been given to you. Talk us through that from when you first started playing. At Waterhead and some players that have been produced there. Paul Schoolthorpe, another MBE, and Byron McDermott, etc. What was that like from signing as an amateur player, first joining, all the way through to making your first team debut? I'm sure things weren't just gifted to you.
No, not at all. And I think you ask every player who's played the sport, or any other sport for that matter, they all think they've worked hard. Everybody thinks they've worked hard. And there are obviously different levels of that, of how hard someone's willing to commit and sacrifice, and how much desire they've got to push through some of those tough times, because we all have to face them. It's just some face more than others, and the different levels of it. But I got picked up at 13. We're very close to signing for Wigan and Warrington, if I'm brutally honest. I'm an Oldham lad. I was an Oldham ball boy for 3 years. At the time, Oldham didn't want to sign local lads. I wanted to play for my hometown team. But a couple of years above me were people like Paul Schoolthorpe, Yestin Harris, who, Oldham weren't interested in, and they had to go elsewhere, sort of to carry on the rugby league progression. And my mum and dad had a huge say in me joining Leeds. I got scouted at a game. At that time, I was very far down the track with Wigan and Warrington. Turned up at Edinburgh one day to have a look around, meet Doug Lawton, who was the head coach at the time. My mum and dad fell in love with the place. I was a 13-year-old who was massively influenced by my parents, and it meant I was out of all the politics over in Lancashire, and I was starting afresh in Yorkshire. And at the time, there was a real divide on how they viewed youth and I suppose how they develop youth. Sort of in Yorkshire, I felt there was a more targeted approach. And certainly at Leeds at the time, you look at the first team when I joined, Franny Cummins, Paul Cook, Matt Schultz, a couple of old lads there for you.
Well done.
but I thought I won't. Did I mention Marcus Vast then? They were just like a splattering of young players coming through, and all you ever want as a young lad is an opportunity if you're good enough. And I thought this club are going to promote young players. At the time, young players were coming through at Wigan and Warrington, but it just felt different. And being from Oldham, it was exactly the same travel distance as going to Wigan and Warrington. And so I set out on that journey, and I probably. I know I had some talent. I think you have to understand your strengths. I certainly think you have to understand your weaknesses, but you have to understand your strengths. And I knew I had some. I knew I was a talented kid. But I knew when I looked around my age group, there were some guys who had unbelievable qualities, who were better than me at doing different things. And I thought, well, if I'm going to make a fist of this, I'll throw everything at it and make sure I'm the most committed player, and I make as many sacrifices as I can, and I throw everything at it so that if I'm not good enough, or a coach don't like me, or I don't get a contract, or I get a bad injury, I can live myself for the rest of my life, and I won't be a bloke propping up a bar somewhere saying that should have been me or that could have been me. I thought I'll throw everything at it, and thankfully with that, you work hard, and you find yourself in and around good people who have a huge influence on you and want to help you and want to develop you. And I got pretty lucky. And I honestly mean that. I think there's some things that happened to me in my childhood that I look back on now and I think, and I'll give you an example of it. Hopefully you'll like this story, but as an under-9, right, this is how far back it goes, but as an under-9, I played for Lancashire in Humberside. We played against Humberside. And I was on the bench. And I remember turning up for this game and travelled all the way up on the coach. Lancashire coach picked us up at Milnrow on M62. And travelled all the way up to Hull. Sat on the bench for, I think it was 20 minutes each way. But I come on for about 3 minutes. 9-year-old, mum and dad are proud as punch because little Kevin's played for Lancashire. But I was so disappointed. I've come all this way for 3 minutes. Are you kidding me? So the following year, representative rugby's changed now, but I can remember turning up for Lancashire trial at Orrell St James, absolutely bouncing down the rain. I remember thinking, I'm not going to be on the bench this year for Lancashire. There's not a chance that I'm going to play. And if we have to travel up to Humberside again, I'm playing. And the teams all get split up as you did in trials, and you're all at different. You all got different community clubs, they're called now, aren't they? But they were amateur clubs back then. You're all in different clubs, and I looked around my team and I thought, I've got no chance today with this group of players that I've been put with. So if I'm going to stand out here, I've got to get the best out of these. And at the time, I'm 10. And I spent the whole time, my whole trial, encouraging everyone around me to do their job, so it enabled me to do mine better. On the back of it, I got named captain. Right, and we absolutely spanked Yorkshire and Humberside that year. So every year then, they were representative rugby, and we made captain. Right, and I found myself at Leeds Academy, and because I've been a captain of English schoolboys, they stick me as captain of the academy. And then you play a couple of reserve games, you made captain at reserves, which nobody ever wants to be captain at reserves, because that normally meant you were going to stay there forever. Suddenly find myself thrown at first team. And at 22, you made captain, because you've been captain of all them teams over the years, and you'd like to think you've done a decent job, but because most of them have been able to win trophies, you get given the Leeds job. So on the back of that, you get given the England job a bit later on. And when I look back on it now, I smile because I think if I'd not turned up at Harold St James that day and done what I did, who knows where my path would have gone. So there's an unbelievable amount of fortune in it. And we've all seen the film. We hopefully have sliding doors out. Just one choice or one moment can define what comes next. Massively in terms of a captain for me.
That story is, I did enjoy that. A couple of things in it. The 3 minutes weren't wasted. At least you was in Hull. You got to enjoy that day. And the other part of it is, again, luck. But it was you who decided to go, right, look, I need to get the best out of this team. The 10-year-old, where does that come? I mean, modern day, that'll probably be all on Fortnite and Xbox and stuff. Where does that come from? The 10-year-old to think like that?
I don't know. I think possibly parents. I had a wonderful childhood, which was a typical Oldham working class family. My mum and dad did absolutely everything. Got an older brother and older sister who would have had more of an influence on me than I could probably describe. I shared a room with my older brother, and he went on to play pro as well. But just had a massive influence on me. And we had a guy come over and do some work with our team in January, and we were talking about personalities and where your characters formed and sort of how you end up being put together and how you end up being what you are. And we talked about brothers and sisters and siblings and how that all fit together. And he sort of had a theory that the closer you are with one of your siblings in age means you're going to be more different. And that's so true of me and my older brother. We had so many similarities, especially in terms of rugby, but very, very different characters. And I reckon he had a huge influence on me being that way. I was quite a mature kid anyway. I was a September birthday, so always found myself migrating to older kids. Don't get me wrong, some of my best mates are my age now and younger, but at that stage, sort of having an older brother and getting dragged to stuff with him, and I always played a year above or 2 years above, and just enjoyed being in that company. Brilliant.
With just regards to, you mentioned games that you've played in the past, and sort of an easy question to throw out there of some of your greatest memories. But without the games where you've won a trophy, is there any games that you look back in your career now that have really stood out to you?
Do you know, I find it really hard remembering them now, which sounds crazy, doesn't it? Because probably had too many bangs on the head. There were plenty. Do you know, when I look back, if I said the 10 best games I ever played, the ones that are most memorable, I reckon 5 of them would be from my amateur career, because I absolutely love playing with my mates. Remember, I'm going to mention Hull again here, not because you two are here, but we played in an under-16s English schools cup final for Oldham schools at Saddlewood Rangers, and I were under 15, and we ended up beating Hull schools, and the game was just brawl after brawl after brawl, like a lot of 15, 16-year-olds full of testosterone in a cup final. It was a Wednesday night, floodlights weren't working properly. And it just one of the best games I've ever played in. So physical and demanding and tough. And just teams from Oldham didn't win stuff like that. So that's certainly up there. And then for Leeds, there's obviously some that are memorable debuts, always something you remember. And for me, that was just a huge learning curve. I was 16. I realised pretty quickly that physically and mentally I had a lot of work to do if I wanted to stay at that level and play consistently and get better. And then there's probably games for different reasons. So I remember playing at Widnes in 2005, just like a regular Super League game, but I think the 3G had just been put in then. I could be wrong, but I remember it being a really fast track and just really enjoying the game, sun was shining. And then the finals are memorable for different reasons, because the week leading in and the build-up is something special. And although you don't remember much of the game, you do remember the prep. You remember what worked for you. You remember some of the daft moments that happened throughout the week, or in the morning before the game, or something that happened in the dressing room. And another things that I look back on with some of the daft memories. And then certainly with England, I was fortunate enough to play for Great Britain right at the start before sort of it got disbanded, and just being able to play with the likes of Andy Farrell and Adrian Morley and Kieran Cunningham, Sean Long, Jamie Peacock, Gary Connolly. There was just unbelievable talent that I'd grown up watching and admiring, and suddenly find yourself in a squad with them. So they were great as well. And then sort of latterly, really proud of what we achieved with England. Although you could look at it and say, well, you weren't successful, you never won anything as a team. But I think on the back of the 2008 World Cup, we realised sort of the playing group, or the core of that playing group, and I would probably work in that core at that time. I was still trying to find a spot and a position that we needed to pull together, and we needed to do something about it to try and get England in a better place. And Steve Mack drove a lot of that, another old lad, and had a huge influence on sort of making people really proud to be part of England again and wear the shirt. And although it's probably one of my most difficult memories, that semi-final at Wembley in 2013, that last minute was horrendous. I still believe that what we were able to achieve when we walked out in that stadium, and I think with 55, 60,000 people in there at the time, but the vast majority were in white England shirts. And I hadn't seen that since being at a World Cup semi-final in 1995 at Old Trafford. I don't remember a group of tribal club fans coming together in all my time playing for England or GB as they did for that semi-final. And as you know, I've been working with England, Dan. That's what we're trying to continue and replicate and improve and enhance. And so certainly playing for England as well, just some unbelievable days.
The memories in there that you'll live with forever, and nobody take them away from you, and they're unbelievable. And you just scratch the surface a little bit there. I'm going to try and push you on it a little bit in terms of you don't get what you've got by everything being plain sailing. And you touched a little bit on the semi-final there, and other maybe times when you feel sick for the weeks that have gone past, so your stomach from things that you've had to face and overcome, 2005 Chance Cup final potentially against Hull again, and things like that. We're doing well, Hull, are we? How do you get over them to carry on your eyes that you had?
The tough, I think, there's been lots of them. I could list probably 20 off the top of my head now that have been really dark moments. And, I lost 5 Challenge Cup finals as a captain, so you carry that around with you, and it leaves a mark on you and a scar on you. Certainly the semi-final left a huge mark on me. I remember being sort of there physically for the next 6 weeks at home, but mentally I was completely somewhere else. But I think you have to work it through. You have to come to terms with it. It's a sport, and it means so much at that moment in time. But I think you've got to be fair with yourself as well. You've got to be able to move on, and as much as sort of a move on from the good times, which I have absolutely. I remember them. They don't define who I am, and same with the bad times. They still linger a little bit more and hurt more, but you've got to move on and get on with your life. And you can either let some of those moments eat away at you and destroy who you are. And people love to have a crack, don't they? When you don't have to flick through any social media, and for every good comment, there's 20 or 30 bad ones. So, you work through that, and I think it's really important just to be true to yourself. I do know that when I get up every morning, I try and be the best I can be. I try and get the best out of every day. And I, like everybody else, I make mistakes, I get stuff wrong. The stuff that I absolutely regret, but I can't change them. And I never set out to be a bad person. I always set out to do my best. So ultimately I can live with myself. I also realised pretty early as well that some of the adversity I've faced has really defined me. It really brings the best out of me, and certainly look at some of the Leeds teams I played in. We played our best stuff when we were backed into a corner and really up against it. And that's probably me as an individual as well. You know, when I'm really challenged and put in a tough spot, that's when the true character comes out. So you learn to deal with it. Experience helps. They're all tough moments and dark moments. You know, I won't shy away from that. They hurt, and the scars that'll be there forever. But perspective really important as well. We mentioned Rob Burrow earlier. We probably mentioned him a couple of times during this, but you know, seeing Rob every time gives me perspective. You know, during that time when you know, a couple of days after that World Cup semi, you know, someone pretty close got some real bad news health-wise, and that gave me a lot of perspective. It just helps you be able to decipher what's important, what truly matters, and you know, ultimately, health and happiness, family is what is key to all of us. Because without it, we're nothing, are we? So hopefully, those bad moments don't define me, just like those good moments don't define me. You know, I'm a person who has feelings and emotions, and just want to be the best I can every day. And like I said, I'll get stuff wrong and all that.
We all do, don't we? And I think that there's some tips in there that people can use to overcome certain adversity. I think probably what helps you sit on that quite not easily, but helps you overcome things more is knowing that your effort was 100% and your intent. You know, it's when people probably fail when they don't set out to actually do anything. That's probably the tougher pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think if you're not prepared to take some risk and show some courage and put your head above the parapet, you never know, do you? I don't know. You can when everybody goes on holiday. I'm not suggesting everybody dives in the swimming pool because I know they're not all deep enough, but we all have a tendency just to stick your big toe in, don't you? And you go, how cold is that? And that determines. But if you just jumped in, I don't think you'd be too bothered. And that's the analogy I'd probably use with a lot of opportunities people get, either in sport or outside. There's always a choice to make, and you can either be committed to something, 100% committed, or you can be involved in it, and you get to say what that is. And then what I found through some of the tough times, the natural reaction for people is to get in bed and put covers over, and get in fetal position and go, I don't want to face this. But the reality is, the longer you stay in bed and the longer you let it fester, the harder it is to face. You just got to force yourself to get up and face it, and you can do something about it. Then you start to fix it. Otherwise, it just gets worse. It snowballs.
All that stuff probably identifies why he was nominated for Sports Personality of the Year, BBC. I'm interested in what that day was like and the event, you know, especially from a rugby league point of view, flying the flag for our sport. What was that like?
Yeah, again, you know, we touched on it with the MBE. It was massively humbling. You know, we're quite emotional on the day because just felt a massive weight on my shoulders, albeit sort of. Again, I played in a team sport. It was on the back of us winning the treble. 2015 had been a wonderful year, but had also been so tough in many ways. You know, I got dropped halfway through it and I was out the team, and I thought pretty much my league career was over for a spell. And so it was a really tough year. And then sort of to find yourself thrust in that sort of sporting environment was brilliant. And just massively humbling again, and just for the sport, you know, the sport always does. It gets behind people, doesn't it? It gets behind its own, and that won't change. And I think at moments like that, you know, for all the criticism you get throughout your playing career, to see so many people get behind you was unreal. To see all the different clubs get behind you was special, because it. I think everybody wants to be respected, don't they? And it was nice that, you know, people were really respectful with that, and just supported you, and just massively humbling, and just meeting some of the people I'd met. You know, I've been invited to sport you a number of times and gone along, and you're sort of in awe of some of the sports people that are in and around But certainly to be thrust in the middle of it with, I remember walking in. They brought sort of the 12 people who were nominated in through sort of the back door at this arena in Belfast. And as I walked in, Tyson Fury was stood there with his entourage, and it was like Land of the Giants. It was something else. I mean, just a massive blow, bumping into people like Frank Bruno and Gary Lineker and AP McCoy, just some absolute legends. Sally Gunnell, there's Denise Lewis. There's thousands of them who were there, and just an incredible experience. The lads, I'd moved over to play rugby union at that stage, and I'd flown into Belfast on a Saturday from London. So we played at London Scottish on the Saturday afternoon, and I jumped on a plane Saturday night and got into Belfast. The lads were flying out of Leeds Bradford Sunday morning, and it was great because sort of after the grand final in 2015, I celebrated, but didn't go crazy. I was always conscious of, if we've got a supporters event, and we had a big event at Leeds Arena on the back of that, and there's a couple of thousand people, and then I'm conscious I'm captain of the club still, and after lads are drunk, someone's got to make a sacrifice and go, well, I'm not going to be drunk here, I'm going to be hopefully one of the people who talks a bit of sense and thanks people. And then I go out and have a couple of beers, and because I was going to play rugby union, we flew out the next morning at 6 o'clock for a family holiday. I had a week off. So I was home that night. I got picked up by a mate at 9 o'clock. I had a couple of beers with the lads and left them to it. So I never really got a chance to celebrate it. And I wouldn't change it, but it was what it was. So Belfast gives us a chance to have to really celebrate 2015. And I remember being in the hotel on the Sunday afternoon, and the lads turned up. The lads had the plane delayed from Leeds Bradford that were flying over to Belfast. So what do lads do when the plane's delayed? They go and drink, and they turned up and they were all smashed, like proper smashed. So it were all through sort of the award ceremony. I'm sat with the team, which were brilliant, and they're all messing about, pulling me ears and doing daft stuff. And all I could think about whilst I was sat there, mega nervous, was like my hands were freezing and sweating at the same time. And I remember going on stage, and all I could think, well, one of the lads is going to try and pull my pants down here. So my belt was pulled really tight. But just a brilliant day. But yeah, just so humbling. So just one of those moments that is completely surreal, that you just don't think you're ever going to have to go through or experience. But I was so glad the team were there. I didn't want to face that on my own, and every other challenge you do it with a group of lads, and I'd spent my whole life doing that, and it was really nice to be there on stage.
Yeah, two things you mentioned within there that I just want to pull out really is one, that time towards the end of 2015 when you did get dropped. How did you cope with that, and what was that like? And then that transition into rugby union and your career within rugby union, just to touch on that.
Yeah, so it happened. I think it's been pretty well documented. This it was in the film that the club produced, that As Good As It Gets. But it was a couple of weeks after it had been announced that I was going to go and play rugby union. I found myself out the team, and there were plenty of conversations that went on at that time. And Brian probably felt my form weren't good enough. I knew my role had changed within the team in the last couple of years. There was some. I trained too hard. And I look back now, I was just flogging myself, and I was mega fit. I used to do a rowing challenge once a week, which absolutely blitzed me. But I knew I had an edge. I knew when I'd done it that nobody could touch me fitness-wise. I knew I could do effort after effort after effort. And no matter how tough the game got, no matter how many back-to-back six we would have in today's game, I could handle it. And I just breezed through it. And I used to do it on a Sunday morning after we played Friday night. And I found myself doing it twice a week, some weeks. And I remember turning up to games in warm-up and feeling, legs are done. I'm not ready to play. I've worked too hard. And some of that was trying to get an edge and stay in front. And some of it was probably I were probably a bit foolish with it. I pushed too hard, and probably to my own detriment. And if I could change it, I would. But we had some really good young players coming through as well who deserved a chance. And the narrative that has been created since then is unfair on both myself and Brian. I remember before we played Toronto, I think it was our last game before we broke off sort of for COVID and the lockdown. I came onto the pitch. I'd just seen his interview that I'd done, and I thought it was a bit naughty. And I whispered in his ear and I said, "You know what the narrative is here, don't you?" And he went, "Yeah, I get it." And it was something they were trying to build about me and him. But little does everybody know that we speak regularly. We had swapped texts yesterday. I'll probably meet him next week. His best coach ever had. So although we had a difficult time, and I were out the team for a little spell, I certainly haven't lost any respect for him, and hopefully he hasn't for me. And I thought we were a good partnership as a captain coach. But during those couple of weeks I were out the team in particular, of course they were tough. They were tough, and at that stage it was still all to play for. We had a great squad, and I were out the team. So who came in was brilliant and played great, and right from the start, I had a really good relationship with our young players. But it probably brought me closer to them, especially those that every week at 13 had been named, and then they weren't in the 13, and they had to go through that challenge of getting through the session without knowing whether they were going to be on the bench. And that, am I, aren't I? I were back in that. Exactly the same as I were when I was 16, 17, 18. But I'm 34 at this stage, and exactly the same as the 17, 18, 19s I'm training with, and sort of had a real empathy for them again. And that was really good for me, because I always thought I had a good relationship with our young players, but it probably gave me a better connection. They'd never seen me be dropped before. They'd never seen me out of the team and probably thought we were untouchable. So to suddenly find myself, in bomb squad, doing what they were doing, the respect from both sides, I think, improved. And what I did, probably part of my mindset was, what's harder than I've ever worked. Like I said, probably to my own detriment in 2015 because of how hard I trained. But actually, I knew my role had changed within the team, and I felt, when I looked around the competition at that stage, I reckon I knew opposition players as good as anybody in the league. But I reckon I knew our players better than anybody. I reckon I knew how to get a lad who was performing at a 6 out of 10. I knew how to get him to a 7 or an 8. And that wasn't anything in particular I was doing. It was a look or a couple of words I said to someone, or I just knew that this player wanted the ball in this position and they got the best out of him. And I felt that ended up being my biggest strength. So although on a stat sheet, on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning after a Friday night game, it may not read as great as the Liam Sutcliffe's. Actually, some of the stuff I was doing, I knew was really important to the team, and so my value had changed. And somebody said to me right at the start of my career, you need to be prepared to evolve and remanufacture yourself every couple of years. And my last couple of years, that's what I ended up being. And it was tough at the time, but it was also brilliant as well. It was brilliant to be able to go, right, well, I'm 34, I'm faced with some adversity here. I'm out the team, I've got to fight and scrap and get my way back in, and there's 3 trophies up for grabs. Do you know what? All the way through it, the big driver was to finish at Old Trafford. To finish at Old Trafford and win grand final. So you forget the treble, but we're all about, I want my final game to win that grand final and be able to close the chapter, the playing chapter of the playing book, and go, right, I get on with the rest of my life now. Knowing that when I started off and I wanted to throw everything at it, I know that I could look myself in the eye and say, well, I'll give it my best shot.
Well, look, congratulations for doing that. Maybe lesser players might have not done that and maybe just wrapped in, maybe. But
Dan, it weren't easy, thank you. But it weren't easy. It weren't easy, and you have all those mental battles that everybody has. You know, you have all that self-doubt, and you start to question yourself. Is he right? Do I still have a value in this team? All those things that you probably shouldn't say to yourself, that a sports I could say, get rid of. Don't think you do, because you're human, and you process it. And I suppose when you care about it so much as well, it's important to understand what other people are seeing and try and put yourself in their shoes as well. So, yeah, it was tough, but we got there. I think how we ended up, and to get that last day at Old Trafford with JP and Kylie was brilliant, and to know that them friendships are intact, to know that my relationship with Brian Mack is brilliant. It's all good.
How was that time in rugby union?
Oh, sorry. I'll keep this short. Loved it. Apart from keep trying to retreat in the defensive line, keep going back 10 metres. Apart from that, it was great. Brian Redpath were our coach, Scottish international, just a brilliant character. And he's been brilliant with Rob Burrow, by the way. He's massive helping hand. He's obviously close mates with Doddy. He's been awesome, and to experience that, to go across, and that's the first time I've been, I suppose, thrown in a completely new environment since I started at Leeds when I come into the first team at 16, 17, and you got to start again, and you got to build that respect, you got to build that trust, and people got to understand what you're about, and it was really good, and that certainly helped with my transition when I finished playing, because it let me know what it's like to walk into a new environment, having been. I never felt I was in my comfort zone at all, but in terms of understanding what day to day it was like, understanding the people I work with, I'd had a lot of routine and a lot of certainty for a long time. So to suddenly been thrust into playing rugby union was different. I had to learn quickly. I'm just really glad I had the courage to try something else and go, I'll have a go at this. Now, once again, I'll throw everything at it. I got loads of stuff wrong because I suppose I was trying to play rugby league in rugby union. But once again, I had some great experiences, met a couple of fantastic lads who were as good a mates now as some of the league boys that I played with 15 years. So, yeah, it was good.
You don't mind having a crack at rugby union, do you, Danny?
Oh, mate, I was as crap at rugby union as I was at rugby league. that was without retreating 10 metres. Just a common theme that you're going through here is about friendship and relationships, how important that is to you. But like as you said, you've been a captain since you was like 3 years old. What does it for you? What makes you a good leader? And when you're looking at good leaders, what attributes is it that you admire in them to make them good leaders, in your opinion?
Yeah, I'd probably go back to a bit. Probably the first question: who I am. That's probably how I'd like to be considered as a leader. I think I'm really honest, and have some empathy with that, and being able to get some messages across that are sometimes difficult and can cause conflict. But I care. I genuinely care about the team. Put the team first. Happy to sacrifice myself if it means the team prosper. Absolutely. So them two are key, and then I'll sort of, the people who I played alongside, there was always another 8 or 9 or 10 brilliant captains in amongst that. So I was so fortunate with the players and leaders and the characters that I had around me. Someone like JP, Danny Badeiras, Barry Mack, Rob Burrow, Danny Maguire, Gaz Ellis, Jamie Jones, just some like unbelievable blokes who just led at different times and were far better than me at having some of those conversations, and were far better than me at getting some of things across. And but it became a team of captains, and we worked hard. We worked together. We didn't always get it right, but there was always a desire to get it right. And when I look now at sort of the qualities of some of the captains and coaches, I'd say in this as well, that I've worked with, there are a couple of qualities that really stand out. Humility is right up there. You know, being able to understand that you don't always have the answer and your way isn't always best. So being able to understand the group and other people's suggestions and opinions, and to be able to say, I got that wrong, be big enough to say I got it wrong. I think that's really important in leaders, and I reckon leadership's changed over the years, and certainly now when I look at sort of sports teams, that big dominant leader doesn't seem to be there in many clubs, in many sports at the minute. It seems to be a cluster of leaders who do it a slightly different way. And I always felt that ours was very much of that model, where it was no real big dominant leader. JP was quite dominant. It was actually a collective. So humility is right up there. They've got to work hard. You've got to work hard, and most sports people do work hard. They do, but you've got to make sure that you're in the top 3 or 4 at everything. You've just got to be. You've got to lead from the front. How you behave is so important, because people can see through words, but they don't actions. They get it. Always put the team first. Massively important. As a captain, there's probably some bits that I'm not great at, especially sort of. I always felt that going out on a team drink was a weakness for me. I always felt that, and this is part of what I regret. If I open up, I should have gone out a bit more. I wish I'd spent a bit more time socially with the lads. Look, I were always going out for something to eat or a coffee, but the big drinks, I'd turn up, I'd spend an hour or two, and then I'd go home, or because I always felt I needed to behave a certain way. I needed to prepare better to get the best out of my own physical state, my own body. So if you want an example of that, you just watch Cool Runnings, and Derice, who's in the bath the night before when they're all in the bar brawling, that's probably more me than being in the bar brawling. So you understand, but then you've got a JP or a Danny Maggs who were real good at that side, and absolutely say, yeah, take lads on a night out and I'll come for a bit, but you know what I'm like. And then probably the biggest attribute, which I mentioned a couple of times here, just having the courage. Just having the courage to do the unpopular thing, having the courage to do sometimes what makes people dislike you, but not for any other reason that you're putting the team first, or you're putting the club first, or you're putting the group first. Just being able to do the right thing. It's massive, and that links into making right choices and decisions. And I found in my career, right from an early age, that the more difficult decisions you face with, or the most difficult, when you're faced with a choice, the most difficult route is the best route. No matter what you pick, no matter what it is, it'll bring you the greatest memories, it'll bring you the greatest success, and it'll bring you absolutely the best satisfaction. So yeah, just having real courage. And like I said, I was fortunate when you look through sort of some of the coaches I played under. My amateur coach was brilliant. He was a mate's dad, as we all find. Long distance lorry driver, work however many hours over a weekend. I remember he used to go to Aberdeen on a Saturday night and get back for our game Sunday morning in his work clothes, not slept a wink. A load of one bars in the back of his car that he'd been delivering, and Beano calendars, cartoon mags, and just so giving and tolerant and patient, and values were instilled in us from an early age. And then when I look through sort of my academy, Dean Bell was our academy coach. There's not a better bloke who you want for sort of mental strength and mental toughness than a bloke like Dean Bell. And then I played a little bit under Graham Murray, Darryl Powell, who Darryl made me captain, who I had great friendship and relationship with, played with him, and then played under him. Tony Smith, unbelievable, great leader. Brian McClellan, and we touched on Brian Mack as well. So really, really fortunate. And then with England, some unbelievable coaches as well. David Waite, very special. Brian Noble, Steve McNamara, I love playing under. So very fortunate.
What was it about Steve that you liked playing under for England?
Probably his honesty. And I think he got me. I think he understood actually that what my role was. And, if you look at that time when Steve sort of really got behind me and my game, we had people like Sam Tompkins in the team. We had Ranky Chase in the team. Just, I couldn't live with them skill-wise. I couldn't get anywhere near them or as fast as them. I couldn't do the things they did. But what I could do was deliver a game plan. And what I could do was deliver a kicking game. And what I could do was get those 6 and 7s out of 10 to be 7s and 8s. And Steve knew that, and he understood it and valued it, and knew that for every one of those 10 out of 10 players we had, he also needed, if you like, a steady guy to get us around the field, somebody who just would deliver a game plan and be able to keep his cool and make sure we delivered certain things that we did. And I always saw me role within that team as I get us around the field. I run our kicking game, but if Rangi or Sam want it, in particular, I'm using them two because they were so special at the time, and Sam still is. I'm not seeing Rangi play for a little while, but sort of as soon as they wanted the ball, they got it. And that was my role. There were no selfish part of me that said, "Oh no, I'm not giving it Rangi," or "Sam's not having it." When they wanted it, they got it. And I think Steve gave the England shirt pride again, which is something I'm really pleased to be a part of.
Obviously, you stepped into that role as director of rugby for England, but after you finished playing, and obviously worked with Wayne Bennett as well. And I think Wayne Bennett said one of the things you touched on earlier was about a true leader can't need to be liked. You can only be a true leader if you don't need to be liked. When you're having them tough conversations, you're going to upset people. What was it like transitioning into director of rugby at England and working with the likes of Wayne?
Yeah, transition was tough. Do you know what? I'd probably say I'm still transitioning now. All this time, yeah. All this time. But just the learning. You don't change as a bloke. You got your values and your standards. And I think the difficulty is that when you come out of that sporting team environment to working in an office, people have very different standards of values. That honesty and trust that you have on the field is very, very different in an office. And it takes some getting used to that. That was the biggest thing. But certainly as a bloke, my values and standards didn't change. It was tough at first, being thrust in. I think, I went into it with John Roberts, who's an incredible guy. He was a performance director, at the RFL, and I went in to provide some rugby league knowledge, and I suppose some on-field experience. Steve Mack had left. They'd given Wayne Bennett the job 6 months earlier. That sort of day-to-day England knowledge wasn't there because Wayne was on the other side of the world, and Steve had wasn't given the England role. So I'd gone in to do that, but within sort of space of a couple of months, I'm just finding my feet. John went off on the sick. He never came back. And we found ourselves in a position after I think it was the Four Nations in 16, where I'd not met Wayne at this. I think I met him once. And we found ourselves at the end of 2016 where there were a couple of things that Wayne had asked the Super League clubs for support on. Now, you'll get different takes on how that were put across and the meeting that went before that, but basically he'd asked for some weekly sessions, a mid-season game, and a pre-season camp. And that were going to be World Cup year 2017, if you remember, and the camp got cancelled. It ended up in a bit of a mess. nobody would speak to each other, and England were viewed upon in a very different light. And I sort of, the start of 2017, thought, right, well, how can I best influence this? We're in a World Cup year. I played in 3 World Cups, and I thought, I want to give our lads the best experience they can have. And at the minute, we have no plans in place. There's nobody running it. The clubs won't talk to Wayne. Wayne don't want to talk to the clubs. Someone's got to try and make this work. So the analogy I use, I jumped in the car and started to drive it, and I expected to be thrown out pretty quickly, but I didn't. And someone strapped the seatbelt on me, and that were it. I were in. So very sadly, John never returned, John Roberts. But I've kept in touch with him. He's a great fella. We started to piece it back together. So it took a bit of time for me and Wayne to work each other out, and to build that trust and the honesty. But what you see isn't what you see in the media, what you see on TV interviews. I mean, you've met him, Dan. He's very different to working with him day to day. And no, he's brilliant. I love working with him. Just so easy to work with. Just like never saw him lose his composure, just because of the experience he had as well. And I speak to him regularly now. Probably every 3 weeks we have a call. But he's just a top fella, and really enjoyed working with him. Really enjoyed working at the RFL, and Danny, because you were part of some of the England programs. We put together that DNA, and the EPU was put together, and some of the things that we did probably never got. People were never made aware of them, and that's how it is. I get it, and ultimately, sort of the GB tour tarnished and tarred a lot of the work we did in those other programs, which is so sad, because the strides we made and in sort of the youth setup and our academy, and how we tried to bring it all together, and then you throw in sort of bringing the nights back, taking the nights to PNG, dealing with All Sport England funding and making sure that it was put in the right place, and actually our teams got great experiences and understood the value of playing for England and the value of the shirt, and what we did with the women's game, our women's international team, the sessions we ran for them, taking them to PNG, getting them paid for the first time in the history of the women's game, and then the wheelchair tour to Australia. Some of the stuff we did is, I'm really proud of. But unfortunately, you get the GB stuff didn't go well in that sport. So, but love working with Wayne. Love working with all those people in the EPU. Love working with all the England programs. I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was passionate about it, and I genuinely hope that all 3 teams win the World Cup next year. I really, really do, because it just has such a huge boost for the sport in this country.
Outstanding. Just as we start to wrap it up, because like I say, we really appreciate your time. Obviously, now in the role of Director of Rugby at Leeds Rhinos, talk to us, what are the qualities you need to be a Leeds Rhinos player?
Probably mentioned some of them. There are some non-negotiables, and I think that's probably, Danny knows some of my philosophy anyway, having worked with me at England, but humility, hard work, team first. I mentioned it with some of sort of the leadership qualities. You've got to have those 3. You've got to be willing to, I don't want to use the word conform, but you've got to be willing to show and behave in that certain way. And wrapped around all of it is you have to have an incredible attitude. You have to want to win and fight and scrap, and I mean that metaphorically, by the way, and be part of something bigger than what is just picking up a paycheck once a month. You've got to really invest and throw yourself at it. And I think we did it with England. I've done it here at Leeds. We pulled together a full DNA. We've completely revamped how we scout. We've revamped what we look for in potential and players. But absolutely, they need to have the right attitude. That's key for us. And we will take any build. We will take any set of personal circumstances on board. We want to help people and develop people, and give them an opportunity like I had. And but they have to have a great attitude, top and bottom.
Brilliant.
Outstanding. And Kev, before Rob kind of finishes off, firstly, it's quite clear to see that the opening gambit of your care is quite clear right throughout the full podcast. And ultimately, one of your biggest strengths is knowing people and understanding people and being able to get the best out of them, which ultimately has the best for the team. And I think, obviously, when you speak about England and wanting the best, how to kind of manipulate programs, if you like, to get the outcome, I think that's something that you're very good at. So keep doing that. Wish you all the best at Leeds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, just exactly the same. I think the message that we've got throughout this has been outstanding. I think for any young player, going all the way back to when you was under nines, but then that work ethic and the qualities that you've described with the whole of the podcast has been absolutely outstanding. So thanks for your time, and thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. You're not bad for a couple of old lads, are you?